major chemical facilities. Also, the White House now considers additional sanctions against Russia and its support of Assad and the Syrian government. Joining me now for more on what's next, Michael Prejean, former military intelligence officer, and retired Lieutenant General Tom Spoehr, former deputy commander of U.S. forces in Iraq and currently with the Heritage Foundation Center for National Defense director. General, let me start with you. I interviewed Heather this morning, and what was interesting to me is she talked about the mission being the removal or the destruction of ISIS, protecting innocents from chemical warfare, and also it felt like a hedge against Iran. And that part made me feel like perhaps it's open-ended, because I'm not sure how that looks and how many men and women we have to commit to such an endeavor.
Yeah, I would say that's really not about Iran. In this case, it was in part about sending a strong message to Assad that the use of chemical warfare is completely unacceptable. And so,
no, sir, I mean, but with all due respect, I mean, going forward, not this weekend, I think we all agree, we know what was happened there, but going forward, what's the administration's the game plan?
Yeah, the big overarching emphasis is to make sure ISIS does not reemerge, as you talked about, make sure there are no threats to Israel or Jordan, our friends in the area there, constrain the flow of refugees, and if we can perhaps counter the influence of Iran and Russia and Syria, that would be a good thing.
Right. Michael Prejean, you think, though, that we should be more aggressive here, that is this out of a moral obligation or military or both?
Well, absolutely we should be more aggressive because, you know, I understand Secretary Mattis doesn't want to put U.S. troops at risk, but if he doesn't do that during his tenure as Secretary of Defense, he's just pushing that down the road. The general just talked about emerging threats against Israel and our Sunni allies. They are Iran. Iran now has missile factories in Syria. They're increasing Hezbollah's ability to strike Israel with precision-guided rockets. So Iran is definitely part of the equation, and that's something that I believe Bolton and Pompeo are pushing the president to look at, especially with what Iran has been able to do in Iraq and what they are doing in Syria and Lebanon and, again, in Yemen.
How do you combat that, Michael? What forces, what strategy do we use to combat that particular threat in the theater inside Syria?
Well, I think what we do is we take away the protections of the JCPOA and go after Iran's central bank and also go after the supreme leader's Sadat Corporation, which is basically worth upwards of $190 billion. If you go after those entities, Iran cannot fuel terrorism in Iraq and Syria. They can't pay those militias. They can't give them advanced weapons and rockets. So there's a lot we can do outside of deploying U.S. troops. We just got to pay attention. All right.
Also, of course, the U.S. and the U.K. now charging that Russian-backed hackers have infected computer routers in its global cyber espionage campaign. In general, we heard about a major surge in trolling activity by Russia at the end of over the weekend. So what do you make of it? Is this the next great theater of war, the cyber the information highway, superhighway?
Yeah, cyber is an attack going on every day, tens of thousands of attacks by Russia, by Iran, by North Korea. This should come as no surprise to anyone, in my opinion.
How do we combat it? Because it feels like they've had a lot of success there.
Yeah, so we have to be on our best in terms of defenses, cyber hygiene, if you will, changing our passwords, keeping our software up to date, and then we retaliate or strike back when we can.
Michael, you mentioned General Mattis. How confident are you that we can fight this the way you're suggesting and not be pulled into a deeper war? And we've only got 10 seconds for your answer.
Yeah, well, just pay attention to the intelligence, and where there's gaps, get more intelligence to find out what's going on.
Certainly it is a quagmire. Gentlemen, thank you both for your service and for your time this afternoon.